You're listening to Fandom Unpacked, the podcast, an audio version of our regular live stream series where we unpack modern fandom with some of the brightest minds in sports and entertainment. I'm producer Peter Yajicek, and once again, we have two hosts on Team Situation, CEO Damian Bazadana and Account Group Director for Sports, Attractions, and Live Events, Jeff Mealy. And our guest for this episode is Elisa Padilla, CMO for the New York Red Bulls. Here's Damian to get things rolling.
Elisa, thank you for joining us. I'm a big MLS fan. Dating myself many years ago. We worked with the league many years ago, so I had actually really memorable experiences with my son. We went to the All-Star games. We went to the championship. We flew down to Atlanta for a match. And I feel like, and I'm also a local Jersey resident, and I've had a lot of experiences with the Red Bulls. I find MLS fascinating in the sense of it is one of the few major sports leagues that are centered around community. You guys do it really well. I think the Red Bulls do it phenomenally well. I've been to a bunch of games, but I'm going to go on the assumption that a fair number of people on this webinar have not. I would love, if you don't mind, starting with take me through the fan experience of game day, like the sounds, the sights, the feeling. Like, how would you describe it? The sensory story, however you want to just take us through that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you, Damon, Jeff, and Peter for hosting us and having us be part of your event today. We're really happy to be here. And Damon, love to hear that you're a New York Red Bulls fan. Thank you for your fandom. So, here at the New York Red Bulls, our fans are our number one priority. And simply said, we are the most fun and fan-friendly sports and entertainment experience in the market. When we think about the fan journey on match day, we think about from the moment you turn on Guyan, if you're in your car or you're getting off the path, we're thinking about what is the energy that people are feeling, what are they seeing, what are they smelling, what are they going to touch. So for us internally, we call this the street-to-seat experience, right? Because we believe that your experience starts from the second you touch our property. So for those that are first-time comers, or if you've been coming here for years, every single match, we try to make sure that there is passion and that people are feeling and celebrating their fandom as they are arriving, and we're welcoming them onto the boulevard. So the boulevard is the first step, where we have an experience for everyone. We have interactive soccer experiences for kids. We have live music. We have photo ops, for those that love to take selfies. We have a DJ playing, music. It's all about getting into, sharing the spirit for the club. We also have the crossbar, which is right off to the side of the boulevard, where you're able to have something to eat, you're able to have something to drink, really just get in the mood, to get to watch the match. And for us, we think about every touch point because what? The one thing that we're selling here is we're selling an experience, right? When you go to a sporting event, you don't know the outcome. So we want to make sure that you have the best experience when you come to Sports Illustrated Stadium and when you are watching our New York Red Bull, match. And I also think that when we think about, providing value to our fans, we think about how do we bring theme nights to life, right? So last season, for example, every single night, for every single match, we had a theme, we had a giveaway. And I think that that's part of establishing a place where you can be, you can come and celebrate with your community. And then the other great thing, not to boast about our home, is that we were built for soccer. So there is not one bad seat in the house, whether it's raining, whether it's not raining. It's built for soccer, and it's an incredible venue to experience a live match. And, we think about our most loyal fans, which are our Red members. And, we want to make sure that if you've been a Red member for the last, 10 years or, just one season, that every time that you're coming to a match, you're experiencing something different. So we continue to elevate everything that we're doing.
And how first off, that's one of my favorite things in terms of what Major League Soccer did was it created the stadiums, in particular the Red Bulls, around the experience. I used to watch the Red Bulls at what was now MetLife Stadium, like a giant stadium, and so I'm dating myself here. And to watch it and to watch the league at large really begin to frame the stadium experience exactly like you talked about, and watching the Red Bulls do it just as a resident, it really does bring home a sense of community and just makes the energy. You could put me in almost any stadium, close my eyes, like in terms of I would know I'm at a Red Bulls match just by the sounds. You can feel the sounds and the sensory component, which I think is very different than football and other sports, which is exciting. How do you balance one of the things that we're seeing across different verticals, and a lot of people we've had on this webinar series, is kind of the balance between audience development and attracting new audiences in, at the same time the kind of revenue management. And it's complex because, as you see just on any live experience, it feels like ticket prices are going up. And with the advent of AI on revenue management, we see it. AI is really good at maximizing revenue per ticket. At the same time, you're trying to build loyalty, and you could see the fan base is just so ridiculously excited to be there. And I'm sure they'll spend a lot more per ticket if you ask them to. How do you balance that, though? Because there's a lot of pressures, right? Of financial pressures of driving revenue for the organization, at the same time remaining accessible. How do you, I'm just curious how you juggle and think through that.
Yeah, so I think, from our perspective, Damien, we are the loyalty of our Red members and supporter groups are our number one priority. We live and breathe to make sure that we are providing a best-in-class experience, that we are delivering value for the money that they're investing in the club. And the way that we think about it is, you know what, they're investing in us from a monetary perspective. So we need to invest in them from an experience perspective. We have surveys where, we literally read our surveys after each match. We understand the pain points. And once we understand, what if there's any barriers, we quickly action to rectify it. Our attendance year after year has gone up. So look, we must be doing something right? And from a renewal perspective, we're at 80%, which is actually really great. And when we think about, fandom, we think about that club connection, right? So it's if you feel really good about coming here and your club, specifically for us, the New York Red Bulls, are responding to, and are listening to you and are working tirelessly to really work on every single barrier that you may be encountering, I think that, people pay attention to that. I mean, we have folks that reach out to our president directly and he responds to them directly. And if there's a pain point, the executive team is made aware of it and we action to rectify it. Because look, our Red members and our supporter groups are the heartbeat of this organization. And when we think about growth, MLS is the youngest league, in sports. When we think about, getting younger, we just have to make sure that we're doing things right. Because if you have a good experience, you're going to share that with everyone the same way as if you have a bad experience, you're going to share it with everyone, right? So we want to make sure that we're on the right side of those conversations.
Just out of curiosity, it's a very broad question. What types of questions do you get from people or feedback? Is it generally on the field advice, almost saying like, we need to blah, blah, blah? Or is it really, really mostly about the experience?
Damien, they're telling us who we need to recruit.
There you go. Okay.
We get it from, you need to sign X player to, you know what, there was a rain delay. And why didn't you warn us that there was rain coming? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's, I think and we take them all very, very seriously. Last year, when we introduced our new show Open, and that's what we refer to pregame, the feedback after, the second match was that it was too loud, right?
Yeah.
So we literally, for the next match, it's like everybody, who controls the sound in the stadium was involved. And you know what? After the next match, we level set and the fans were like, okay, you know what? This is much better. So I think that those are the things that, are really, really important because we're in a really competitive market. And look, at the end of the day, it's, I love what we're offering and we are accessible and, we're getting better every single day. And it's with the fans are our North Star.
Yeah. By the way, it's great to hear that you have such insight and closeness to the feedback. It's not always the case. As heading the marketing, and sometimes there's a big distance between service and marketing. And it's the fact that you instantly knew, like, oh, I could say exactly what they say, which is a fantastic thing. Jeff, I know you want to get in. Jeff oversees, obviously does a ton of work on our sports and different categories. I know you have a ton of questions, Jeff.
I have a bunch. And, Elisa and I have had a few conversations in the past, and, we could go on for a while. So I will do my best, Elisa, to bring them as brief as possible for you. But, one of the things that I would like to hear your perspective on is we have continued to have these conversations around the ongoing growing footprint of the sport in the U.S. and the MLS in particular. There's growing interest in viewership, playing, growth in farming even. And there's even been the recent announcement, for example, of Sunday Night Soccer, which is going to be going head-to-head with the NFL. On a little different path, it's becoming more prevalent in pop culture as well. Increased video game sales, properties like Ted Lasso and Welcome to Wrexham. How do you feel the focus on soccer in popular culture has impacted the fandom and even who shows up and maybe what fans expect when they walk into the stadium?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, right? Because we know from the research that MLS did in 2024 is that attendance grew, exponentially. And I think that, what, locally here from our perspective, our North Star from a club perspective is to be the point of reference for soccer in North America, right? And we think about sport and culture in that intersection. So, when we think about accessibility, we want to make sure that folks have access to come to our matches. And you know what? They're going to experience 90 minutes of nonstop action, right? When we think about audience segments, we think about, okay, so we have our Red members, we have our supporter groups. How are we reaching college students, right? We have a product dedicated to college students, our Student Pass. And, last year we did a promotion where it was, if you purchased a Student Pass, you also got a path ticket to get you back home safely. So I really think that, soccer, we are going to break into the top 4, but I think part of that is people are curious. And I also think that, we offer a great experience and we're accessible. So for us, you know what? It's like, okay, you haven't come to a game, but you're wearing our gear. To us, it's like, okay, you have access to our club. You must have some interest because you're wearing our merchandise, right? If you're looking at the programming on Apple before our matches, right? There must be some interest there if you're following us on social media. So I really think that we want to be where the fans are and meet them where they are. And at the end of the day, and everyone in sports has this issue. It doesn't matter whether you're in the Big Four or MLS. It's how are you getting people off the couch to literally get them into your stadium or into your arena.
That's really interesting. Let's hang on to that for a second about meeting people where they are and those audience segments that you mentioned. On our side, we work with regional sports teams daily. And obviously, one of our goals and focus points is really identifying and bringing in new audiences. Sometimes even finding those new ticket buyers in unexpected audience segments. Who would you consider to be those newer audiences that are coming to the stadium? Have any of them surprised you? And even on top of that, how do you continue to nurture them to make sure that they keep coming back?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because the data that we see on paper sometimes doesn't match the people that we see in the stadium, right? So we know that, look, when we think about our red members, we know that it's families, right, that are coming to the games that live out in the suburbs. And when we think about our overall product portfolio, right, so you could either be become a red member and commit to the entire season. You can have a partial plan, commit to some games, or you can just be a single game ticket buyer, right? So when we think about the single game buyers, we think about, okay, how are we going to get them back? So last year we launched a first match program. So we know if it's your first time coming to a match, you get personalized information. You're able to pick up a surprise and delight at guest services. And 2 days after the match, you're sent an offer, right? So that's how we're nurturing them, because everyone wants to be seen, right? So how many of us have gone to a sporting event and when we see ourselves on the video board, we go crazy, like we've never seen ourselves in a mirror, right? So this is the same kind of thing, is just like acknowledging, hey, we saw you. We know this was your first time. We want you to come back. And, I think that we have to, right now, we know that our primary ticket buyer is male, 43 years old. He lives in the suburbs. He's married. He drives an SUV. And it's like, okay, like my goal at year 5 here is to make sure that I have touched every single person that is within that profile, right? Because then after that, I could start going wider and casting the net, wider. But it's like, the number one rule in marketing is just like, go fish where the fish are. So right now we're fishing in that pond, but we're not keeping our eye off the other ponds. And, we have over 43,000 youngsters playing in our youth programs in the tri-state area. So it's nurturing the future fans, through the connection and the love of the sport that they're playing at a young age.
Fandom Unpacked is brought to you by Situation, an award-winning marketing agency built for live entertainment that champions the power of unforgettable shared experiences around the world. We offer full marketing and creative services for experience-based brands in live entertainment, attractions, theater, sports, arts and culture, and more. Check us out at situationinteractive.com. Now back to our Q&A.
Yeah, I really respect how much you and your team focus on not just who the audiences are, but continuing to focus on the different levels of fandom as well. The most recent match that I went to was actually with a large portion of the Situation team here. We went to the second triumphant match against Columbus in October, and the energy was just through the roof. And it was impossible to not get swept away in that action and the excitement. But that energy, I think, also comes from the community itself and not just what that specific match represented. And I think no matter what level of fan you were, you got swept away in that. And what do you think attributes to that?
Well, I think it's all part of our overall strategy, right? We're super hyper focused right now on hyper local. So owning Harrison. And, we want to be good neighbors to those the stadium is in a residential, part of the town that we're in. We have Kearney, that's our other neighbor, and we have Newark, that's our other neighbor. So, for us, owning those 3, is really, really important, because we want every single resident in those 3 towns to think about the New York Red Bulls as their team, and that this is their home away from home, where they can come, cheer and be part of something that, 20,000 other people have in common, which is the love and passion for this club. And, when we think about New York and we think about the accessibility, right? The next place that we want to own is, we want to own Jersey City. We want to own Hoboken. We want to own the financial district. We want to own Battery Park. And it's because we know, and no one's walking around with rosy colored glasses, we know that parking is an issue, right? So How do we educate consumers to say, hey, we are just a path, a train away. You can be here in 15 minutes, right? So that's the way that we're thinking about it. And, it's for us, our neighbors are so important because when we think community is so important to us as a club. And when we think about, the future fans and we think about making an impact, it's about that emotional connection, right? Here within our team, we always talk about evoking emotion. Everything that we do has to evoke emotion to drive action to get share of wallet. Because as you know, Jeff and Damon, we're all sellers, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter whether you're in legal, whether you're in finance, or you're in marketing, or you're on the commercial side, we're all selling something. But think about your consumer habits, right? Where you're
Mhm.
spending your money, right? There has to be that emotional hook. And once that emotional hook happens, it's about being part of a community that's larger than yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I really love the way you put that, and there's certainly one way to look at a fandom of a sports team, which is already big in itself, but as a born and bred Jersey boy, that geographic pride is always so important as well, so when the 2 come together, it could be explosive in the best way and something that you could really own.
Yeah.
Uh, Peter, I do want to ask you, I know that some audience questions are coming in. Would
Yeah.
you like to throw some over?
Absolutely. Let's try and get two. The first one I think will be quick and maybe a free kick. Elisa, somebody asked, what was your favorite theme night? You talked about
Oh
theme
my
nights.
goodness. That's like asking me who my favorite child is.
No, but we're not going to play this on the big board. It's okay.
I think opening night was spectacular last year. And the reason for it is because that set the tone for the rest of the season, right? And having fans come in and, just seeing their passion and their excitement, then that, trickled along the way. And then from an activation perspective, I think, which wasn't necessarily a theme night, but the launch of our mascot, Red. And again, when you think about community, how the team here was able to bring that to life with the support of our supporter groups, and to see him come to life was just, it was like it was incredible. It was incredible. So but I think, for the person who asked the question, opening night was by far my favorite theme night.
All right, cool. I'll sneak one more in and then hand it back to Jeff. This question was: I love the idea of thinking of the fan experience from street to seat. What opportunities do you see to engage with fans in the consideration or purchase path pre-street? Is it possible to translate the in-venue experience digitally to people before they buy a ticket or Red membership?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. And that is something that the team has been trying to crack even before I got here. And it's really, what is that what is that fandom digital ecosystem? And I think that, there are multiple touch points, right? So you have our app, which we reimagined last year, and it's really again, thinking of the fan first. You have our email marketing, those touches, and then you have our website. But I also think, we can leverage partners like Adidas, who have stores throughout New York, where it's like if the New York Red Bulls are prominent when someone is shopping, right? We think about being fashion forward first. So I think that there's multiple touch points. However, I will say we still have not cracked the code of really thinking about, maybe the couch to fridge experience. So we're working on it. I can assure you of that.
I'm gonna get a little deeper right now. We've talked about the ongoing excitement around the sport and the outstanding season this past season, and I know we have high hopes for the next season and ongoing growth of fans, etc. But where I do want to keep it positive, and I want you to tell me a little bit about what makes you most excited about for the future. I also kind of want to go down the path of what keeps you up at night. What challenges do you see, and what are you doing to overcome them?
Yeah, well, I think, I think Jeff and Damon, I think you know the answer to this. Butts and seats is what keeps me up at night. Like it's like thinking, okay, how are we going to break through the clutter, right?
Mhm.
How are we going to, get into people's feeds in the most, exciting way. And I think that, part of that is that the marketing ecosystem has really changed. So continuing to educate ourselves on consumer behavior and what's important to consumers. I think that's the second part of the thing that keeps me up at night because from a storytelling perspective, right, we think of everything through four lenses. One is we think about community, we think about culture, we think about development, and then we think about fan engagement, right?
Mm.
So everything that we do, it doesn't matter whether it's a press release, it doesn't matter whether it's a post on Instagram. It's like, are we checking every single box because we want to be very intentional about making sure that we're thinking about everything from the fan experience, right? Because if we don't think about it that way, then how are we going to get better and reach newer audiences like we talked about previously?
That's amazing. And I do think that it's reflected in every touch point that I've received from you as we continue to stay engaged. Peter, has anything else come in from any of the viewers?
Yeah. I think we have time for another fan question here. What kind of coordination does the Red Bulls do? Do the Red Bulls do between the brand as a whole and the players who are increasingly brands themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a really good question. And I have to say that I have been in the sports and entertainment industry for over 2 decades, and I have never worked for a club where sporting and business we work hand in hand. And we're really, really lucky to have our sporting director who believes that our players should be out in the community and really have a presence within, our community because we want people to get to know the players. And we're also very lucky because we have a few homegrowns, which I think is pretty cool, right? When you think about, oh, I grew up next to so and so who maybe lives in Chatham, and I've seen him grow up playing soccer, and now I can go to the New York Red Bulls game and see him play on the pitch. That's pretty exciting. But I think that one of the things, that our comms team and social team works with on the player side is really preparing our players on how, their brand, how they show up when they're speaking to the media, and then also on social media, right? They are a brand. So how can we help them continue to cultivate their brand and grow their fandom? Because ultimately it's going to come full circle, right? If you're a fan of a specific player, you're following them on social media, you're going to buy their jersey, you know what? Eventually you're going to make your way to Sports Illustrated Stadium to watch them play on the pitch.
Yeah, that extended brand ambassador, that's something that's come up a lot in the series.
Yeah.
And then, thank you for sharing that. Damien, I think you had a question you wanted to get in there.
I do. Elisa, what is your favorite part about soccer fandom? You've marketed a lot in live entertainment and live experiences.
Yeah.
You show up to Red Bull. Like if you're sitting in the parking lot, you're walking into the stadium. As a marketer, what do you go like? What makes it special, the world of soccer, or the world of Red Bulls? However you want to answer that world. What is your favorite part about it?
I think it's the passion, Damien.
Yeah.
I think that it's like on match day, I sit at the top of the stairs at gate B and I watch like the supporters tailgating. The fact that they're there hours before the match starts and they're in their gear from head to toe, right? It's just like the passion and the love that they have for this club and for the sport is like no other. And then to really, when they march into the stadium, and then the fact that they're on their feet for 90 minutes, it's like, it is incredible. And I have, I'm lucky enough that this past season I was able to visit a few different clubs and in different markets when we were playing on the road, and it doesn't matter, like it's that supporter fandom is what makes MLS so special. And I don't think I didn't witness that in basketball, I didn't witness that in hockey, and I certainly didn't experience it in baseball. And, it's a really, really special time to be part of this league and this sport. And look, every single day I'm learning something new about soccer fans, and about our fans. But that passion, it's the reason that I get up in the morning, because I want to make sure that we are delivering the best experience so that we continue to refine what we do to, complete our mission, which is to be the point of reference for soccer in North America.
That's going to do it for this episode of Fandom Unpacked, the podcast. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Find out how to join us live for an upcoming recording at situationlive.com/fan. We'll see you next time, true believers.